Have you ever walked out of a conversation and felt like you lost, even though you said everything right? Have you ever laid in bed replaying every word, every pause, wondering why you still feel small? What if I told you your need to explain yourself isn't a strength? It's a trap. You keep walking in, with your guard down, every time, because the moment you speak just to be understood, you've already surrendered your power. You've been taught that being heard is everything. But what if the most dangerous person in the room is the one who doesn't need to speak at all? What if silence, used intentionally, doesn't mean weakness? It means control. Because in a world addicted to noise, silence isn't absence. Silence is presence. And presence is power. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Friedrich Nietzsche. Have you ever walked out of a conversation feeling like you lost, even though you said everything you needed to say? Have you ever felt that lump in your throat, that invisible tension in your chest, like every word spoken took something from you instead of giving something back? Defeat. Perhaps you were surrounded by loud voices, arrogant confidence disguised as leadership, constant interruptions. And somewhere deep down, you believed that staying silent was the same as surrendering, that not defending yourself was weakness, that silence meant defeat. But what if everything you've been taught about strength is a lie? What if real power has never been in the words, but in their absence? What if silence, when chosen consciously, is not weakness, but the highest form of dominance? Modern neuroscience, social psychology, ancient philosophy, and existential thought all point toward a truth most people aren't ready to hear. Those who talk the most often know the least. Those who seek to convince are already at a disadvantage. Because the louder you shout, the more you reveal your need to be heard. And needing to be heard is a symptom of inner instability. We live in a society that confuses performance with power. But true power is quiet. It does not perform. It simply is. In high-stakes negotiations, silence is used as a psychological tactic. In FBI interrogation training, agents are taught to use silence to increase discomfort in the subject, forcing them to fill the space with confession. In social dynamics, studies confirm that silence during a confrontation is often interpreted as authority or judgment. The less you say, the more powerful you appear, because silence activates the other person's internal chaos. According to a 2018 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, when an individual in a group setting breaks a norm, such as refusing to defend themselves or staying silent in a charged conversation, the group begins to shift its emotional orientation. Silence destabilizes. It is not passivity, it is disruption. But let's be honest, most people don't use silence this way. Most people use silence because they're afraid, because they've been conditioned to believe their voice doesn't matter, that speaking up causes problems, that rocking the boat will cost them love, validation, connection. And so, they swallow their truth, over and over again, until one day they don't even know what their truth sounds like. This is where the breakdown happens. You know you're collapsing inside when you stop responding, not out of clarity, but out of fear. When your silence is not choice, but conditioning. When you hold your tongue not because you understand the battlefield, but because you no longer believe you belong on it. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of ourselves we silence, suppress, abandon. And when you suppress it long enough, it begins to erupt in other ways, in anxiety, in burnout, in resentment, in chronic fatigue, in emotional numbness. Neuroscience confirms this too. Chronic emotional suppression activates the amygdala and keeps the body in a state of stress. Your nervous system begins to treat every social interaction as a threat. Not because people are dangerous, but because you are no longer safe inside yourself. But here's the truth. Silence is not the problem. It's the kind of silence that matters. There is a silence of fear, and there is a silence of mastery. The silence of fear bends, breaks, hides. The silence of mastery observes, commands, redefines the entire dynamic. This is the silence that Nietzsche alluded to when he spoke of the Übermensch, the overman, a being so grounded in their own self-created values that they no longer react to the world. They shape it. He wrote, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." That's what conscious silence does. It removes you from the pettiness of reactive exchange and places you in the atmosphere of sovereignty. Let me give you a real-world example. There was once a woman. We'll call her Elise. She was known for her kindness, her empathy, her deep presence. But she also had a lifelong pattern of letting others speak over her, of not speaking up, of being the peacekeeper in rooms full of chaos. At work, her ideas were taken. In relationships, her needs were minimized. And for years, she stayed silent. But not in power, in pain. Until one day she reached a breaking point, not with a scream, not with a breakdown, but with a single decision. She began to study negotiation theory, power dynamics, psychological warfare, and learned that silence, strategically applied, is one of the most effective tools in existence. She began to rewire her patterns using cognitive behavioral methods and breathwork to regulate her nervous system. She practiced deliberate stillness when provoked. She listened like a predator, not waiting to reply, but watching to reveal. And soon something changed. People began to listen before she spoke. Rooms began to turn when she raised her eyes, not because she said more, but because she needed to say less. What happened? Elise had stopped reacting. She stopped needing others to agree, to understand, to validate. She began to live not from compliance, but from command. And it changed everything. This is not just a personal story, it's a pattern. In behavioral psychology, this is called reversal of dominance. When someone who previously occupied a submissive social role shifts to a position of unpredictable control, it disrupts the equilibrium of the entire group. The result? Authority is reassigned, but only if the individual holds their center long enough not to collapse under pressure. This is exactly why Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor, psychiatrist, author of Man's Search for Meaning, wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. Silence is that space, and freedom is choosing what to fill it with." But this path is not easy. It is not glamorous. Because when you start using silence with intention, people will get uncomfortable. You will be accused of being arrogant, cold, too quiet, too intense. But that's not a sign to stop. That's a sign you're beginning to stand out. You must understand this. In a world addicted to noise, silence is rebellion. In a culture obsessed with visibility, silence is mystery. In a society where everyone is trying to win with words, silence is checkmate. But there's a shadow side to all this, because silence, when misused, becomes self-erasure. The question is not, should I speak or not? The question is, why am I silent? If your silence is rooted in self-abandonment, then your silence is a prison. If your silence is rooted in self-possession, then your silence is a throne. So how do you shift? First, stop trying to win arguments. Neuroscience shows that once someone is emotionally activated, the logic centers of their brain shut down. You're not debating, you're feeding their fear loop. Let them unravel themselves. Second, train your nervous system. Practices like breathwork, meditation, and cold exposure increase vagal tone, allowing you to stay calm in high conflict moments. The calmer your body, the more strategic your mind. Third, observe before you act. Learn to listen not to reply, but to analyze. People reveal everything when they feel unthreatened. Let them talk. Let them expose. You are not here to prove. You are here to understand. Fourth, master timing. A pause is not absence, it is pressure. Use it. The right sentence, spoken after a moment of powerful silence, can collapse an entire narrative. Not because it is loud, but because it is precise. Fifth, detach from approval. Those who need to be liked are always manipulatable. The Ubermensch does not seek applause. He creates impact by being unshakable. This is the power of stillness, of choosing not to be pulled into emotional games, of refusing to perform when provoked, of becoming a gravitational force in a world of chaos. Now look at your life. How often have you stayed silent? Not because you were in command, but because you were afraid to lose connection, afraid to disturb others, afraid to be misunderstood. Let me ask you again, is your silence a weapon or a wound? Because today you get to choose. You can keep justifying yourself to people who don't hear you, or you can step into a new form of presence, a presence that doesn't need to be explained, a presence that commands respect before a word is spoken. So if you're ready for this level, write this down. Not for me, for yourself. I choose the silence that commands respect. This is not just a statement, it is a recalibration of how you show up, of what you allow, of who you are when no one is watching. You are not here to beg for space, you are here to embody space. And when you master this, when you stop needing to speak in order to matter, you'll realize something extraordinary. That the most powerful person in the room is often the one who says the least. Because stillness is not emptiness. It is presence. And presence is power. You don't need to fight for it. You just need to stop giving it away. And that begins right now.